Hi, everybody. This is the Baseball Hut, the amazing, spectacular, terrific, the great one, the People's Champion, your host, the Hut, and welcome back to the Baseball Hut 2. I hope you like this video and hit that subscribe button. And this is another episode of the insane asylum known as WFAN.
They're coming to take me away, ha-ha. They're coming to take me away, ho-ho, hee-hee, ha-ha, to the funny fun.
So again, welcome back to the Baseball Hut 2. And we like to talk about a lot of stuff here. I love talking about these clowns at WFAN and how insane they are. And quite frankly, one of the more insane people at that radio station for the last 30 years has been Joe Benigno. He's a guy that started out, he won a contest to where he was able to do, these programs in the middle of the night. And obviously he had a show in the mid-morning. Well, he retired, a year and a half ago. And then he came back last year. Now, Benigno, if you don't know, he's a Mets fan. He's also a Jets fan. And he's one of the most negative personalities, and he's nuts. I mean, completely, totally, woo, woo, woo. I mean, no joke. Last week, there was a controversy with him where he basically revealed that he's been texting New York Jets coach Robert Saleh and talking about how he wanted to text him the first 16 plays, offensive plays that the Jets needed to make in a game because he felt the need to do that. He had all the plays figured out on what the Jets needed to do, and he wanted to do that. And obviously, this was a bad situation because Beningo basically made a fool out of himself, and he had to recant it. And he basically revealed the fact that Robert Saleh doesn't like the quarterback, Zach Wilson. So that's the mentality there of one of the members of the residents at WFAN. Now, when he returned last year, the New York Mets were in first place. Since he returned, we saw what happened in the last month of September with the Mets. We saw they got into postseason, but they should have won the division. I blame it on him. And you saw how poorly they played last year. I blame it all on him because he carries a black cloud over him that is constant. It never goes away. And it's always the pain, the pain. Retire. So he went on a show that New York Post writers John Heyman and Joel Sherman put out. I guess they have a little podcast they do. And they bring in all these different baseball people and different personalities. And Beningo was on this podcast. And they talked about the Mets in this podcast, the Jets a little bit. Also on this podcast, I guess they had Bobby Valentine on, the former Mets manager. But Joe had to have a complete rant. He had a complete rant on the Mets owner, Steve Cohen. And he basically said that he has done nothing as owner. Now, normally I don't play these clips, so I don't want to get in trouble. But I think I did enough to manipulate the video part of this clip from the New York Post that I should be fine. So let me play you this clip. It's about 30-something seconds or so. A Beningo just going on an insane rant. He fails to mention how, we'll get then into it. Cut it.
Years we had the Wilpons, right? All we did was kill the Wilpons. Freddie coupons, all it is. They're cheaper than cheap, okay? So now we get this guy. Everybody's delirious. Uncle Stevie, he's got his hedge funds. He's got his artwork, all of this. We're all delirious about Steve Cohen. Well, what has he done? Nothing. We had a 101-win team. He completely destroys it the next year. Let's be honest about it. Couldn't wait to get rid of Verlander and Scherzer so he could cut his losses. He's more worried about putting Ferris wheels in casinos next to Citi Field than he is about his team winning a championship.
Okay, so as you can see, Beningo is insane. He's an insane individual from this clip. A couple of things he needs to understand and just sort of do a history. Because these people, they love to bring up the Wilpons, but they fail to mention that during the time that Jeff and Fred Wilpon solely owned the team, never in the history of the Mets did they won 100 games. They won 97 games in 2006. But they did not win 100 games at all during that time that the Wilpons owned the team. They only have 2 years where they won 90 games, over 90 games, 2006 and 2015. In the second year of the Cohens, of Steve Cohen owning the team, Mets won 101 games. That's the second highest total the Mets have ever had. The prior ownership group that was Doubleday and Wilpon took them 6 years to win 100 games, and they were bad for the first 4 full seasons of that ownership group. Okay, if you want to go back further, it took Joe and Payson 7 years to have a winning season when they won the World Series in '69. So Joe Beningo, in his pain, has to understand something. This is a much more successful person than he is and I am, and everybody that's talking about how he is as an owner. This is a franchise that has been a mess for a long time. He is trying to get rid of the dysfunction that's been in this organization. He finally brought in a general manager / president of baseball operation who is obviously and completely tearing apart the entire structure of this franchise and bringing in new people that are not Wilpon people. Benigno and a lot of these clowns like Greg Giannotti that's on the fan don't understand that. Okay? And I'm going to make it very simple. It wasn't so much the Wilpons were running the team, but the people the Wilpons had hired running the team were incompetent and are incompetent. And David Stearns and Steve Cohen need to continue to clean house of these Wilpon people. Because what I want to see is not only do I want to see all these Wilpon people out, I wanted to get to a point where the Wilpons eventually sell their share, because they do still own at least 5% of the ball club, and they're still skulking around. If you get rid of every person that's been hired by Jeff Wilpon in particular, and by Fred Wilpon, you'll make them feel that they're not welcome here. We don't want them here. We want the Wilpons completely out of here completely. We don't want them skulking around. We don't want Fred hanging around. We want them out of here. Okay? And that's one of the things that I've noticed that they're trying to do. They're trying to get this dysfunction out of here. And it hasn't been easy. Steve Cohen had a very difficult time hiring general managers because of that dysfunction and because of this sort of propagandized reputation that the media has created about Steve Cohen being difficult to deal with. But his relationship with the fans has been great. His relationship with former players has been great. There's no problems here. Except from people like Joe Beningo and anyone associated with WFAN. Now, I am a very positive person when it comes to the Mets. But I will be honest with you. The first year Steve Cohen was okay until they had 2 injuries that incapacitated them. They lost Jacob deGrom, who was their best player, and they lost the shortstop. And they lost deGrom for half the year, and he didn't pitch until the following August. And you lose that, you lose your sense of invincibility. The Mets felt invincible with him on that mound, and they were in first place. Then they come back from the All-Star break. That week, that Friday, they lose their shortstop. So you lose 2 key players in that first season, and the team falls apart because you have nobody. There's no stars here other than Pete Alonso. Last year, they built a team that was a veteran team, and for whatever reason, they ran out of gas. deGrom came back. He had a lousy September. Max Scherzer was a disaster. Okay, they tried to do it again. They tried to bring in another piece to replace deGrom. That didn't work out with Verlander, and there was something missing with the ball club. What that was, I don't know. I think a lot of it wasn't because it was a bad clubhouse. It was just it didn't work. And I also think that some of the other spare parts in this team were dysfunctional pieces like Vogelback, Yorme, Tim LeCastro. You cannot have guys that are one-dimensional on a major league team in this day and age. Now, Beningo is a clown, and he's been a clown for 30 years with his outrageous things that he says, and obviously he's doing crazy stuff on the side. Just think about it. When he's not on the air, he's causing trouble with his teams. So what kind of trouble is he, and in particular those at the fan, have been causing with the New York Mets for all these years? You have to ask yourselves, where does Benigno get the idea that he should tell a professional coach or manager how to run his team. Where does he get the chutzpah to do that? Well, either he thinks he feels comfortable enough to do that, or he's done that before in the past, or he's just nuts. I think it's probably all of those things, and I think a lot of them do that. And I think a lot of them cause a lot of trouble on the side when you don't know much about it. Probably giving bad advice to players, bad advice to coaches, bad advice to managers. Quietly around behind the scenes. Okay? And that's how I look at it, and that's how I look at these people. They do not speak for us as fans. They don't speak for you, and they don't speak for me. If you're watching this video, you don't like this stuff. Very rarely does anybody write to me and say anything negative about the things I say about them. And I am the only one calling them out. And I'm quite entertaining doing it, quite frankly. You know, how many people are going to say that Joe Beningo's nuts? I would mention back in the 90s and the early 2000s that I used to make fun of him in the morning, saying that he was crazy. That he was the type of guy, when they would ask people that worked there, like the board op and the producer, Bernard McGurk, they would ask him who was the most likely person to go on a killing spree at the fan. They always say Joe Beningo. And they would know. They work with the guy. And if you see this behavior, you see this insane nonsense, bringing up the past. One thing has nothing to do with the other. And again, the best thing that Steve Cohen can do is get rid of the rest of the Wilpon people and hope at some point Jeff and Fred sell their shares of the team to Cohen or to somebody else. Because we can't allow them to disrupt this situation. I would also mention this, and I haven't mentioned this in a while. Do not underestimate the influence of the former ownership of the ball club, causing trouble behind the scenes, starting trouble behind the scenes, getting in the ear, say specifically at the morning show, who Jeff Wilpon, I would mention, has a relationship with Barstool Sports. Now, who's Barstool Sports, you might add? Who owns them? Dave Portnoy. Dave Portnoy has a relationship with the morning show. Dave Portnoy also has a relationship with the former owner of this club, Jeff Wilpon. Jeff Wilpon wanted Barstool Sports along with A-Rod, and I guess Travis Kelce, we just recently learned, wanted to buy the ball club. The original deal for Steve Cohen to buy the Mets was to keep the Wilpons in place for 5 years. They were still going to run the club for 5 years. Now, if the A-Rod group with Jennifer Lopez, that would have been a disaster. That would have been a disaster. But, so there's a lot of spitefulness here from Dave Portnoy and from the Wilpons to still cause havoc with Steve Cohen. And this is another example. What kind of relationship does Joe Beningo have with Barstool Sports? You have to ask yourself that. Because he looks like a guy that sits and watches pizza reviews. Don't you think so? I would think so. And if the morning show has a relationship with the morning show, I'm sure they have a relationship with him. So, let me know what you think about this video. Of course, please subscribe to Baseball Hut 2. And this is another not homeless report. That's the A's report. No, this is another report on the nervous hospital known as WFAN.
They're coming to take me away, ha ha. They're coming to take me away, ho ho, hee hee, ha ha. To the funny part.